The boy in seat 12E was coloring clouds, the man beside him, broad-shouldered, quiet. Eyes the color of stormlight. Stared out the window as if he was searching for something hidden beyond the endless blue. The plane trembled gently under the hum of engines, and the world outside looked peaceful, but inside seat 12F, there was turbulence no radar could detect. Ethan Cole hadn't flown in nearly a decade, not since the day his call sign, Viper 1, was buried under layers of classified silence and folded flags. Now, he was just another passenger on a commercial flight to Denver, trying to keep his son's juicebox from spilling on his jeans. "Daddy, look," said the boy 6 years old, his hair a messy brown halo. "That cloud looks like a dragon." Ethan forced a smile. "Yeah, kiddo. Looks fierce." But as he looked closer, his chest tightened. The shape really did look like a dragon. An F-22 Raptor, climbing into the heavens, its contrails slicing the sky. He blinked and turned away. Not today. The flight attendants made their rounds, the soft clinking of carts filling the cabin. Laughter, chatter, the rustle of snack wrappers. It was all ordinary, almost comforting. But somewhere around row 10, an off-duty Air Force officer noticed something. Ethan didn't see him at first. The officer, tall and young, maybe late 20s, wore civilian clothes. But the posture gave him away. Military men carried their weight differently. Shoulders squared, head held like it knew where it belonged. The officer kept glancing back toward seat 112. Something about the man there tugged at his memory. That jawline, the scar near his temple, the way his hands fidgeted like they'd once belonged in a cockpit. When the seatbelt sign blinked off, the officer stood, pretending to stretch, and walked toward the back. But he didn't make it far before stopping beside Ethan. "Excuse me, sir," he said politely. "Sorry to bother you, but you look really familiar." Ethan looked up, caught off guard. "Don't think we've met." The young man smiled awkwardly. "Maybe not. I'm with the 94th Fighter Squadron. You ever serve?" The words hit like shrapnel. Ethan's throat tightened. The 94th, his old unit, the Grim Reapers. He swallowed hard. "Long time ago." "Really?" The officer's tone changed, respectful, curious. "Which bird?" Ethan hesitated, eyes flicking to his son, who was now dozing against the window. "Just a desk job. Nothing special." The officer nodded, though something in his expression said he didn't quite believe that. He studied the man's calm restraint. The kind that didn't come from office work. "Well, you've got that look," he said lightly. "You know. The I've pulled 9 Gs and didn't flinch look." Ethan's lips twitched. Maybe just caffeine. They both chuckled, and the officer moved on, but his curiosity didn't fade. A few rows up, he slipped into an empty seat beside another man. Clean, cut, older, and wearing a leather jacket with faint Air Combat Command insignia. "Sir," the young officer whispered. "I think you'll want to see this. The guy in 12, I swear I've seen his face in the archives." The older man didn't look up from his magazine. "Archives?" "Yeah, the F-22 program. I think that's Captain Ethan Cole, Viper 1. The magazine froze mid-turn. The man's jaw stiffened. "That's not possible." "I'm serious, sir. He's sitting right there, with a kid. I thought he was KIA." The commander closed his eyes for a beat. The name Viper 1 carried weight. In 2016, Cole was one of the Air Force's top Raptor pilots, a legend among those who flew the silent skies. Then came the mission no one spoke about. Operation Silent Storm, classified, lost contact over Syria, officially presumed dead. The commander exhaled slowly. "You sure?" "Positive. That's him." The commander rose quietly, gaze narrowing toward the back of the cabin. And there he was. The ghost of the skies alive. Wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, trying to calm his sleeping son. When the plane hit a pocket of turbulence, Ethan instinctively reached for the armrest with one hand while shielding his boy with the other. The movement was fluid, practiced. A pilot's reflex. The commander walked down the aisle. As he drew closer, he felt something stir inside him. A mix of disbelief, awe and an ache only soldiers knew. He stopped by the seat. "Excuse me," he said softly. Ethan looked up again, slightly wary. "Yeah." The commander's voice dropped lower, steady but trembling with restrained emotion. "Sir, welcome back, Viper 1. The words cut through the cabin like thunder. For a heartbeat, Ethan didn't move. His son stirred in his sleep. The noise of the engines faded into a low hum, and everything around him blurred. His lips parted, but no words came. The name, Viper 1, was supposed to be buried with the man he used to be. How do you know that?" he managed. The commander gave a small, knowing smile. "Because, sir, I was your wingman once. And just like that, 10 years of silence cracked open. The passengers around them had no idea what was unfolding between seats 12E and 120F. But for two men who once ruled the skies, time had just folded in on itself. And ghosts were waking up. Ethan stared at the man standing before him, searching his face for a memory he'd buried deep. The commander looked older now. Lines carved by years of responsibility, streaks of gray cutting through dark hair. But those eyes, they were the same. Lieutenant Marcus Hale. The man said quietly. Call sign Falcon 2. You pulled me out over the desert when my bird got clipped. You don't remember. Ethan's breath caught. He did remember. The burning sky, the radio crackle, the voice screaming, I'm hit, over the comms. The impossible rescue that cost him everything. But memory was a dangerous runway. One wrong landing, and you crashed all over again. I remember. Ethan said finally, his voice low, heavy. Didn't think anyone else would. Marcus's lips trembled into a sad smile. We all thought you were gone, brother. They told us you didn't eject. That there was nothing left to recover. Ethan's gaze drifted to the window, where the clouds rolled like ghostly waves. They weren't wrong. Marcus frowned. What happened out there? Ethan didn't answer. He looked down at his son, still asleep, his small hand resting on his father's arm. For years, Ethan had kept his silence for that boy. Some stories were too dark to tell. Too dangerous to remember. The silence stretched until the flight attendant approached, offering polite smiles and pretzels. Marcus nodded, letting her pass, then leaned closer. You don't have to tell me everything, but I can see it in your eyes. You didn't walk away from that mission by choice. Ethan's hand tightened around the armrest. No, he whispered. I didn't. Outside, the sun was starting to set, streaking the clouds with golden fire. The light hit Ethan's face, illuminating the faint scar near his temple. The one that hadn't healed right. He exhaled slowly. You ever wonder, Marcus, what happens to the men who survive the missions they weren't supposed to? Marcus studied him carefully. Every damn day. For a moment, neither spoke. The engines hummed, the world moved, and time, 10 years of it, hung between them like an invisible weight. Then Marcus leaned in slightly. Command needs to know you're alive, Ethan. They've been chasing ghosts of that mission for years. Whatever happened, you deserve to tell your side. Ethan's laugh was hollow. Tell my side. You think they want that? The moment I open my mouth, someone buries me again. This time for real. Marcus's eyes darkened. You think that's what this is? A cover-up? Ethan looked him dead in the eye. I don't think, Marcus. I know. A flicker of unease crossed the commander's face. The quiet intensity in Ethan's tone, sharp, unshakable, wasn't the voice of a paranoid man. It was the voice of someone who'd seen too much. And lived to regret it. The captain of the flight announced they'd be landing in 30 minutes. The calm voice over the intercom felt surreal against the storm brewing in row 12. Marcus straightened, trying to read Ethan's guarded expression. You've been off the grid all this time. How? Ethan shook his head. You don't want to know. I think I do. Ethan studied him for a long moment, then sighed. After Silent Storm, my jet was hit, no warning, no radar alert. It wasn't the enemy. It was ours. Someone jammed my transponder and fired. They made it look like a combat loss. Marcus's pulse quickened. You're saying? I'm saying the wrong people were running that mission. Ethan said. We were flying under orders that didn't come from the Pentagon. You remember how weird things got before deployment. The sealed briefings. The scrambled command lines. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah. Everyone was spooked. Thought it was an intel leak. It wasn't, Ethan muttered. It was a ghost op, rogue, off book. They used us, then erased the evidence. Marcus leaned back, disbelief and anger flickering in his eyes. Jesus, Ethan, if that's true, this goes way above anyone you can trust. Ethan finished. Exactly. The boy stirred again, murmuring softly in his sleep. Ethan's expression softened instantly, his hardened edges melting into quiet tenderness. Your kid? Marcus asked gently. Yeah, Jake. Ethan smiled faintly. 6 years old. Smart as hell. Doesn't know a thing about who I used to be. Marcus watched him for a moment, understanding dawning. He's why you disappeared. Ethan nodded. When I crawled out of that desert, I made one call. Not to the Air Force, not to anyone from command. To Sarah, your wife. She waited 3 years for news that never came. When I showed up on our doorstep, she didn't scream or cry. She just said, please don't ever make me bury you again. His voice broke slightly. I owed her peace, so I gave up the skies. Marcus's gaze softened. Ethan hesitated. She passed last year. Cancer. A heavy silence filled the space between them. Marcus lowered his eyes. I'm sorry, brother. Ethan nodded quietly, his hand brushing over his son's hair. Jake's all I've got left. That's why I'm keeping my head down. For him. Marcus sat back, torn between loyalty and duty. If command finds out you're alive, they won't just let this go. That's exactly why they can't find out. Ethan's eyes hardened with a quiet, immovable resolve, the kind only forged by fire and loss. But before Marcus could respond, the captain's voice came over the intercom again. Only this time, it wasn't calm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a technical issue, please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. The plane dipped slightly. Passengers gasped. The seatbelt lights flickered. Ethan's instincts kicked in immediately. His hand gripped the armrest, eyes scanning the cabin layout like he was assessing threat vectors. Marcus turned pale. You feel that? Ethan nodded. Yeah, that's not turbulence. Something was wrong, very wrong. And somewhere, deep in the hum of the aircraft, Ethan Cole felt the unmistakable chill of being hunted again. The plane jolted again. Harder this time. A few passengers screamed as drink cups toppled and luggage bins rattled open. The captain's voice returned, this time strained, controlled but tense. Cabin crew. Please take your seats immediately. We're, dealing with a systems anomaly. Ethan's stomach dropped. He could hear it. The change in pitch, the way the engine strained unevenly. He'd spent thousands of hours in the air, he knew when a bird was wounded. Marcus was already unbuckling his belt. I'm going to the cockpit. Ethan caught his arm. No, you're not. You're not rated for commercial. Neither are you anymore. Marcus shot back. Ethan's eyes narrowed. But I can read an emergency like this before the captain can even diagnose it. The seatbelt sign blazed red, but Ethan ignored it. He bent toward his son, his voice low and gentle. Hey buddy, wake up for me. The boy blinked groggily. Daddy, what's happening? Just some bumpy air, champ. Keep your seatbelt on. Okay. The calm in Ethan's tone could have fooled anyone. But Marcus saw through it. He'd heard that voice before in the middle of dogfights, right before Ethan did something insane and heroic. The cabin lights flickered again. A faint whine echoed through the fuselage, an electrical feedback loop. Ethan muttered under his breath. That's avionics. Left system bus failure. Marcus frowned. How the hell would you know that? Ethan didn't answer. He was already piecing it together. The plane wasn't losing altitude yet, but it was behaving strangely. Like someone, or something, was interfering with the controls. He stood abruptly. Watch my kid. Ethan. But he was already moving. The flight attendants tried to stop him near the galley. Sir? Please return to your seat. He flashed the look. That sharp, commanding stare that said this isn't a suggestion. The same one that once made younger pilots fall silent over comms. One attendant hesitated, then stepped aside. Ethan reached the cockpit door and knocked once. Captain, this is passenger 12F. I can help. There was no response. He tried again. Captain, then, faintly through the door, a voice. Tight, panicked. Systems are frozen. We've lost nav input. Who is this? Ethan Cole, former Air Force, F-22 pilot. Let me in. A beat, then the lock clicked. The door swung open, and chaos greeted him. Warning lights pulsed across the panels, alarms beeping in irregular tones. The co-pilot was sweating. Fighting to stabilize the bird. Autopilot's gone, he said. We're getting false inputs. Nav data keeps resetting. Ethan slid into the jump seat, eyes scanning the display. He recognized the pattern instantly. Randomized data injection. Not mechanical. Not weather-related. Digital interference. Your systems are being spoofed, he said sharply. Pull the bus breaker. Now. The captain blinked. The what? The avionics main bus breaker. You've got corrupted inputs feeding false data into flight control. You need a hard reset before it overrides. The co-pilot hesitated. That could kill our nav feed entirely. Ethan shot him a glare. Do you want fake altitude readings or no readings? Choose. The captain swallowed hard and pulled the breaker. The cockpit lights flickered, alarms screamed, and then went silent. For a terrifying moment, everything went dark. Then, one by one, the systems rebooted. The plane leveled. The captain exhaled shakily. What the hell just happened? Ethan stared at the control panel. Someone pinged your transponder with a backdoor code. Hijacked your navigation. The co-pilot blinked. You're saying we were hacked? Ethan nodded grimly. Not by accident. He looked out the window, and froze. Far below, cutting through the twilight clouds, were two faint contrails. Perfectly parallel. Perfectly deliberate. Marcus's voice crackled through the cabin intercom. Ethan, you seeing this? Ethan pressed the cabin phone to his ear. Yeah. 2 Raptors on approach. No commercial IFF signals. That's military. Can't be coincidence. Marcus muttered. Ethan's mind raced. The timing. The transponder spoof. The interference. It all lined up. They weren't after the plane, they were after him. He turned back to the captain. Listen carefully. Those jets aren't here to escort you. They're here to identify a ghost. Me. The captain paled. What are you talking about? Ethan's voice hardened. I was declared dead for a reason. Someone high up wanted me gone. They find me alive, they'll make sure it sticks this time. A Marcus came barreling toward the cockpit, face ashen. Ethan, they're closing in fast. You need to see this. Ethan peered through the window. 2 gray silhouettes gliding closer, F-22 Raptors, wings catching the dying sunlight. He knew their language. The slight roll, the formation spacing. It wasn't a combat approach yet, but it was a warning. Ethan's heart pounded. They found me. Marcus leaned beside him. You think they're armed? Ethan gave a bitter smile. They don't scramble Raptors without reason. A Jake's frightened voice echoed faintly from the cabin. Daddy. Ethan turned. Eyes softening. Stay with the nice lady, Jake. Daddy's just helping the pilots, okay? The boy nodded weakly, tears threatening to spill. Ethan turned back to the window, jaw tightening. Marcus, if those birds try to force a descent, we're in trouble. Marcus looked confused. What can we even do? We're in a damn 730 Sun. Ethan's mind was already calculating, visualizing escape corridors, fuel ratios, possible jamming countermeasures. Every instinct screamed at him to take control. Then, over the radio, a cold, mechanical voice broke the silence. Commercial flight November 402, this is Air Force Command. You are entering restricted airspace. You are instructed to change course immediately. The captain froze. Restricted airspace. We're nowhere near. Ethan's eyes widened. They're rerouting us. Marcus whispered, why? Ethan swallowed. Because someone wants to finish what they started 10 years ago. And outside, the Raptors tilted in unison, like vultures circling the past. The hum of the engines filled the silence, low and steady like a heartbeat that knew something terrible was coming. The captain's hands trembled slightly on the yoke as he repeated the transmission, trying to keep his voice steady. Command, this is Flight 402, we've received your message, but we're showing normal airspace status. Please confirm coordinates. Static. Then the same voice again, colder this time. Divert course immediately to heading 180. Failure to comply will be treated as a national security breach. The captain's face went pale. That's south over restricted desert. Ethan's jaw locked. They're pulling us away from radar coverage. Marcus leaned closer, his voice low. Ethan, we can't let them take control of this bird. Ethan's mind raced, calculating the invisible chessboard unfolding in the sky. They weren't just chasing him. They were isolating him. Cutting him off from every civilian frequency. If he obeyed, they'd force the plane into a controlled landing. Somewhere remote. And no one would ever hear from Ethan Cole again. He turned to the captain, his tone sharp. Stay on current heading. Acknowledge their message, but don't change course. The captain hesitated. If I ignore an Air Force command, I lose my wings. Ethan leaned closer. You ignore this, or we all lose our lives. Marcus pressed the comm switch, voice calm but clipped. This is Lieutenant Marcus Hale, U.S. Air Force. Active duty. Identify your commanding officer. A pause. Then a new voice, familiar, deep, and laced with menace. Well, I'll be damned. Viper 1 and Falcon 2. You boys always did make a mess. Ethan froze. The voice slithered through the static like poison. Reynolds, he whispered. Marcus's blood ran cold. Colonel Adrian Reynolds, the man who'd overseen Operation Silent Storm. Their former CO. The same one who filed Ethan's death report. Reynolds's chuckle echoed over the radio. You were supposed to stay buried, Ethan. But here you are, playing house with a kid. Cute. Ethan's hand curled into a fist. You tried to kill me? Correction, Reynolds said smoothly. I tried to protect national security. You were a liability, Viper. You went off script. Marcus cut in, anger seeping through. You ordered friendly fire on one of your own pilots. Reynolds sighed theatrically. Let's not be dramatic, Lieutenant. You both knew what that mission was. Ghost ops don't leave witnesses. Ethan made sure of that when he found out who was really behind the coordinates. Ethan's eyes burned. The memory hit him like a breaking wave. The village, the wrong intel. The civilians who were never supposed to be there. He'd questioned the orders, refused to fire. That refusal had sealed his fate. He spoke slowly, venom in every word. You sold out operations to private contractors. You used us to clear ground for mercenaries. Reynolds chuckled again. Call it capitalism, son. The world moves fast. You couldn't keep up. Marcus slammed his fist against the console. You killed your own pilot to cover your crimes. Silence. Then Reynolds's tone darkened. I can still fix that mistake. You're in my airspace now. Cooperate, and maybe your boy lives long enough to forget your name. Ethan's heart went cold. Jake, his son. The captain looked terrified. What the hell is going on here? Who are these people? Ethan met his gaze. Men who think they own the sky. Reynolds's voice boomed again. You've got 5 minutes to comply, or I'll authorize intercept. Last chance, Viper. The two Raptors outside spread out, one sliding below the plane, the other rising above, lethal dance. The message was clear. Marcus looked at Ethan. We can't outfly them. Not in this thing. No, Ethan said quietly. But maybe we don't have to. He pulled open the emergency comm panel and began rewiring a line with the precision of a man who'd done this in the dark before. Marcus frowned. What are you doing? Sending a ghost ping. Ethan muttered. If I can bounce a distress signal off a civilian frequency before they jam us, maybe NORAD picks it up. Marcus's eyes widened. That's suicide. They'll trace the signal. Ethan gave him a grim smile. Only if I stay on it long enough for them to lock on. He began typing rapidly, overriding systems meant to remain untouched. Warnings flashed red across the display. The captain shouted something about unauthorized access, but Ethan didn't stop. Then, beep, signal sent, far above. A satellite somewhere blinked to life. A whisper of digital defiance in the sky. Reynolds's voice crackled with fury. You just made a very big mistake, son. Ethan's eyes flicked to the horizon. The Raptors had moved closer, their nose cones aligning. Missiles armed. Marcus's breath caught. Ethan, they're going to fire. Not yet. Ethan said. They'll want to make it look like an accident. Reynolds's tone dropped to a growl. You always were a stubborn bastard. Say goodbye to your legacy. Viper 1. The first Raptor dove suddenly, positioning beneath the jet. The second climbed high above, perfect pincer formation. Marcus grabbed Ethan's shoulder. We've got to do something. Ethan's mind raced, scanning every memory, every maneuver, every impossible save from his years in the cockpit. Captain. He barked. Kill your transponder. Right now. What? Do it. The captain hesitated, then switched it off. Instantly, the Raptors broke formation. Confused. Their targeting systems lost lock. For a brief, miraculous moment, Flight 402 vanished from their digital sight. Ethan exhaled sharply. We've got 30 seconds before they reacquire. Marcus looked at him, eyes wide. What now? Ethan's gaze hardened. No, we make them chase the wrong ghost. He tapped into the aircraft's backup beacon, rerouting the old ping frequency he'd learned to spoof during stealth training. A fake signature, one that would appear like his heat pattern. Flared miles east. Let's see how badly they want me, he muttered. Outside, one of the Raptors peeled away, chasing the decoy. Marcus's eyes widened. You did it. But Ethan wasn't smiling. One's still out there. And Reynolds doesn't miss twice. As if on cue, the remaining jet rolled into attack position. Ethan stared out the cockpit window at the machine he once commanded. The sleek predator of the skies, now aimed at him. I trained men like him, he said quietly. I know what he'll do next. Marcus swallowed hard. And, Ethan turned, eyes blazing. I'm going to stop him. The cockpit vibrated with tension. Outside, the F-22 hovered like a silent executioner, wings glinting in the last light of dusk. The passengers in the cabin had no idea how close death truly was. How one pull of a trigger could turn the sky into fire. Ethan's mind was already racing ahead. He could almost feel the air currents. The vector angles, the flight envelope of the Raptor outside. He'd lived inside those machines once. He knew their heartbeats. Marcus leaned forward, voice low. You said you can stop him. How? Ethan didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the console, to the rows of systems not meant for hands like his. The F-22's radar is tracking our EM signature. If I can spoof the frequency shift again, we can trick him into thinking the jet's breaking apart. That sounds like a long shot. For Ethan smiled faintly, that reckless pilot grin Marcus remembered from the old days. That's my specialty. The captain stared at him. You're not seriously about to tamper with a 737's radar beacon in midair. Ethan looked him straight in the eye. You want to live? The captain hesitated only a moment, then stepped aside. Marcus watched in disbelief as Ethan worked. Hands steady, movements precise. He tore open a maintenance panel, rerouted the radar pulse frequency, and overrode the system safety locks. Sparks flickered as wires crossed and fused. Then, a sound, a low, rising tone as the spoof kicked in. The Raptor's targeting lock flickered, uncertain. To its onboard systems, Flight fatherhood 2 suddenly appeared as two separate objects, one breaking apart, one tumbling. Ethan grinned. Gotcha. Outside, the fighter banked left, adjusting course. The pilot inside, unable to confirm the anomaly, switched to visual tracking. Exactly what Ethan wanted. Marcus, Ethan said, you ever fly low in a commercial bird? Marcus's eyes widened. Ethan, you can't. But Ethan was already talking to the captain. Drop altitude 5,000 feet. Now. The captain blinked. That's insane. We're over mountains. Ethan jabbed a finger at the altimeter. Trust me. We go low, we get terrain cover. He can't lock on through the ridge lines. Marcus muttered. You always did love playing chicken with the ground. Ethan smirked. Still do. The engines roared as the plane began to descend, the passengers screaming as their drinks went airborne. Jake clutched his stuffed dinosaur, terrified. Daddy. Ethan turned, voice steady but gentle. It's okay, Jake. Daddy's right here. We're just going for a little ride. The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded bravely. Outside, the Raptor dove after them, slicing through the clouds like a silver blade. The sky darkened, the mountains rising up in jagged silhouettes below. Marcus's knuckles turned white. He's following. Ethan's eyes never left the window. He's not following. He's hunting. At 12,000 feet, the turbulence hit hard. The plane shuddered violently, metal groaning under the strain. The captain fought for control, sweat dripping down his forehead. Ethan steadied him with a firm hand. Hold her steady. Use the downdraft. It'll push us into the shadow zone. The aircraft slipped between two cloud banks, the terrain sensors screaming warnings. Altitude. Pull up. Override it. Ethan barked. Trust me. The captain hesitated, then silenced the alarm. Below them, the shadow of the Raptor flashed across a ridge before vanishing. They were in its blind spot. Marcus exhaled shakily. Holy hell, Ethan, you actually did it. Ethan's eyes stayed sharp. Not yet. He'll come back around. He knows this terrain better than the nav computer does. For a few tense moments, there was only silence. The heavy breathing of three men and the faint sound of a child crying in the distance. Then, a streak of light flashed across the clouds. A missile. Flare. Ethan shouted instinctively, but there were none. The captain jerked the yoke left, barely dodging as the missile streaked past the wing and exploded in the valley below. The plane rocked violently, alarms blaring. Damage. Marcus yelled. Port wing surface compromised, the co-pilot cried. Ethan glanced at the readout. It's still flyable. Keep her level. Marcus looked at him with dawning realization. He's not going to stop, Ethan. Reynolds won't call him off until you're gone. Ethan nodded grimly. Then we make him call it off. He reached for the comm switch and pressed transmit. Reynolds, you listening? Static. Then the voice, smug as ever. You just don't know when to quit. Ethan's tone hardened. You're done, Reynolds. I sent a full transmission to NORAD before you jammed us. They have your voice, your orders, and your coordinates. Marcus looked at him sharply. He hadn't actually sent that signal. But Reynolds didn't know that. Bullshit, the colonel hissed. Ethan smirked. Try me. You think NORAD ignores a distress beacon with a classified call sign? They know who I am. They'll trace it back to your authorization chain in under 10 minutes. A long silence followed. Then Reynolds's voice cracked, the arrogance faltering. You don't know what you've done. Oh, I do, Ethan said softly. I just leveled the sky. Marcus grinned faintly. That's the Viper I remember. Outside, the Raptor wavered, its pilot hesitating. Orders were changing. Reynolds. Ethan continued, voice cold as steel, you stand down, or I tell the world how you sold missions for profit. Every name, every payment, every false target. I still have it all. Marcus blinked. You still have what? Ethan didn't look away from the comm. A copy. I made it before Silent Storm. Reynolds's voice cracked with fury. You son of a. Then, Silence. The radar ping vanished. Marcus stared at the screen. He's gone. The Raptor broke off. Ethan leaned back, exhaling slowly. The plane steadied, its engines humming back to rhythm. Marcus laughed in disbelief. You did it. You actually beat him. Ethan shook his head. No. I bought us time. That's all. He looked out the window at the fading light. When we land, they'll come. They'll want what I've got. But I'm not running anymore. Marcus frowned. You sure you want to go public with this? It'll destroy what's left of your peace. Ethan looked down the aisle at Jakey. Small, brave, staring out the window at the last sliver of sunset. My peace died years ago, he said quietly. But his future doesn't have to. The captain turned in his seat, voice shaky but relieved. We're cleared for emergency landing in Denver. Controls back on the line. Ethan nodded. Good. Let's bring her home. The cabin lights steadied. Passengers whispered, clutching hands and crossing themselves. No one knew how close they'd come to never touching ground again. And as the city lights rose beneath them, Ethan Cole finally allowed himself to breathe. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a war he thought he'd left behind. The wheels touched the runway with a thunderous jolt, the kind that sends relief trembling through every bone. The cabin erupted in applause. Half out of reflex, half out of raw gratitude for still being alive. The city lights of Denver shimmered outside like a promise of safety, but Ethan Cole knew better. Safety was an illusion. As the plane rolled to a stop, emergency vehicles swarmed the tarmac. Red and blue lights danced against the windows, flashing across the terrified faces of passengers who had no idea what had just happened 30,000 feet above. The captain's voice came over the intercom, shaky but composed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Denver. Please remain seated until authorities instruct otherwise. Authorities. The word hit Ethan like a cold slap. Marcus leaned toward him. We've got to move. They'll separate the passengers soon. Ethan glanced back at Jake, who was holding his stuffed dinosaur tightly. His little boy looked exhausted but alive. That was all that mattered. I'll get him out, Ethan said. Marcus shook his head. You can't just disappear again. This time, you have witnesses. An entire flight crew who saw you save them. If you vanish now, they'll think you're the threat. Ethan hesitated, eyes darting to the window. Air Force vehicles were already arriving, black SUVs flanked by armed personnel. The insignia on their doors wasn't standard issue. Those aren't local base units. Ethan murmured. Marcus followed his gaze. Private contractors. Ethan nodded grimly. Reynolds's cleanup crew. The seatbelt sign blinked off. The aisles filled with nervous chatter, passengers fumbling for luggage. The flight attendants tried to calm them, unaware that the real danger wasn't turbulence. It was waiting outside. Marcus gripped Ethan's arm. Let me talk to them. I still have clearance. I can buy you time. Marcus. Don't argue, brother. You gave me my life once. Let me give you yours back. Ethan's eyes softened. You sure about this? Marcus managed a thin smile. I've been sure of one thing since I met you. You don't belong on the ground. Ethan gave him a nod that said everything words couldn't. Then he turned to Jake. Hey champ. Jake looked up sleepily. Are we safe now? Ethan knelt to his level, voice trembling slightly. We're safe, buddy. But we need to play a little game. Okay, remember how you said you wanted to be a spy? Jake nodded, eyes wide. Good. Then you're my partner now. We're going to sneak out before anyone sees us. The boy grinned faintly, clutching his father's hand. Marcus whispered. Service door in the back. I'll tell them you're still up front. Ethan gave his old wingman one last look. An unspoken thank you. Heavy with years of brotherhood and sacrifice. Then he slipped down the aisle with Jake, blending into the stream of passengers, until they reached the galley. The emergency door loomed ahead, guarded only by a frightened flight attendant. Sir, you can't. Ethan flashed his pilot's ID, faded old but still official. Air Force. Classified evac protocol. You never saw me. Her eyes darted between him and the child. Something in his face, grief, authority, conviction, made her step aside. Ethan opened the hatch and climbed down the service ladder into the cold night air. The wind carried the faint roar of sirens from beyond the terminal. He pulled Jake close, moving quickly across the tarmac shadows. Behind them, the cabin doors opened. Marcus emerged first, hands raised, approaching the black SUVs. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle, tall, wearing a dark coat, flanked by armed guards. Not Reynolds, but one of his replacements. Marcus's voice carried faintly across the wind. He's not here. He saved that plane. You should be thanking him. The man's response was a gunshot. Ethan froze, turning just in time to see Marcus fall to his knees. Jake gasped. Daddy! Ethan's heart split open. Don't look, he whispered, pulling the boy's head against his chest. The men swarmed the aircraft, shouting orders. They didn't see him. Not yet. Ethan clenched his jaw, grief burning through every nerve. Marcus had bought them seconds. Just seconds. But it was enough. He ran. Across the field, through the fence gap near the maintenance lot, his breath ragged, heart pounding. The city's lights beckoned beyond the wire. By the time security swept the runway, the man in seat 20F had vanished into the night, carrying his son and the last piece of the truth. 3 days later. A quiet motel outside Colorado Springs. Rain tapped against the window. Jake slept on one of the beds, curled beneath a blanket, his dinosaur tucked under his chin. Ethan sat at the small desk, the glow of an old laptop casting sharp shadows across his face. The screen flickered with encrypted folders. Data files, mission logs, coordinates. The ghosts of Operation Silent Storm. He hesitated for a long moment, then clicked upload. The progress bar crept forward, line by line. When it hit 100% he leaned back, exhaling slowly. Somewhere out there, a dozen independent journalists and watchdog networks now had the files that proved everything. Reynolds, the contractors, the cover-up. Jake stirred. Daddy, Ethan turned, his voice soft. Yeah, buddy. Can we go home now? Ethan smiled faintly, though there was sadness behind it. Soon. We just have to finish one last mission. Jake yawned. Are you a hero, Daddy? Ethan's throat tightened. He glanced out the rain-streaked window, where the clouds hung low and gray, like the sky was remembering him. No, he said finally. I'm just a pilot trying to make things right. He turned off the laptop, letting the rain drown out the ghosts. Somewhere above the storm, jets still carved their contrails across the sky, silent, untouchable, free. And though he could never return to the cockpit, part of him still soared with them, carried by the memory of who he once was. Ethan Cole, Viper 1, was no longer dead. He was alive, defiant and finally unburied. And as dawn crept over the horizon, painting the clouds gold, he whispered to the boy beside him. Look up, Jake. That's where the brave ones fly.